Hola. Okay, so let's start again. On the beginning, on the beginning, on the first day, God said, let there be light, and voila. And God saw the light was good and the darkness, and he called it night. And there was evening and there was morning. I'm just gonna skim through this very quickly, but as we saw in the presentation earlier, there is a order and a pattern to this, right? And then we obviously learn all of our lives as a Christians that on the second day it separated the waters, and then he's also heaven. But listen, on the third day, I want to invite you to listen to this new narrative. God created the soil. And on the 6 days, as we heard before, the creatures. But have you for a time pondered that on the soil that God created, there is 90% of all the genetic diversity that sustains and nourishes all? That it's actually, for me, a way that I want you to see now the love of God as a slow process. It's like a stew devoted of love that included photosynthesis. So the carbon, the balancing of these millions of years that the Bible, we can just say it in a couple seconds. It was really a work of love that created nitrogen fixers and the oxygen levels to be just right. And that's when humus came before us. It's a boundless manifestation of love. Just next time you think about photosynthesis or you look at all the green around you, please consider that that's also a way that God gives communion to us and to the planet. I like to see photosynthesis as this selfie that God takes, because he's the opposite of selfish. He's like the most generous person. So instead of taking a selfish, he created this boundless world, right? What do you picture on your mind when you think of the Garden of Eden? What do you picture on your mind when you think about the forest? Do you look at something super trim like the Castle of Versailles? What do you think of? Do you also think of mango? Oh, are we good? So let's think about something more like this, like no human intervention in the paradise. Let's look very quickly about this. Um, Composting is part of being human because it comes from these humans, even if we haven't eaten the forbidden apple. Even if we didn't eat it, we were part of it because we have guts in our stomachs. It's not about being nosy. It's about being mindful how we work gently with earth, aiming to manage the decomposition of our organic matter that we disrupt when we eat. It's just part of we being part of the system. The nature, the madre naturaleza, it belongs to everyone, and the bacteria that is healing the earth in the compost is also bacteria that it's good for the earth, just that one that is inside of our guts. It's claiming for food. So either you're a believer or an ascetic, you should believe in compost in a way, because we became, we are mammals and we are no longer nomads. So to obtain our food, today in your place where you are right now, that I love to know, please leave it in the chat. You purchase your food, you prepare it. I hope you prepare more food than you just purchase made. Somebody we have eaten it for you, but we all eat. So some of us eat local, some of us lease food from like, big box stores that it's hundreds and thousands of miles away, but we all eat. And when we compost these scraps, we become part of this redemption. And it's a gesture that we believe in the hope of regeneration. In nature, organic matter will decompose without our help. It doesn't really need us to do that. And so, oops, like those leaves in your backyard, if you have a backyard, please picture with me how if you weren't there, those leaves will stay there, and they will stay in your property. They will become like a blanket for your trees, and they will protect them in the winter, and it will keep them cool in the summer. But we take them out because we don't think that it's pretty, right? Because we know better. And so we have to unlearn things that we were told about many things in life. And one of them is what is our relationship with the environment in this sense. Pardon me. There we go. So, thy kingdom come. Um, did you ever wonder if a compost pile was part of the Jesus time in the Last Supper? My, I hope you don't consider this analogy a sacrilege, but I'm daring to pick your interest here because what I just mentioned about photosynthesis for me is part of the great exchange, the same way that there was a great exchange with communion. So do you see the picture that I'm trying to get here? When we feed our compost being nutritious food like greens and browns, we are in a way creating a feast, a buffet for those microorganisms that come at different stages and in different courses. So to the appetizer, some microorganisms will come, and I'll talk more about that on a little bit. But all you need to do to have a successful compost is to provide the right amount of the refreshments, water and air. And then we will harvest the results of this compost to provide it to our soil. And that means that we've done our part. Yay, we've done our part. Okay, so what is happening underneath the soil, however, it's a whole different shebang. You will see in this graphic, and there are others out there about the soil food web, that really proves that most human existence has been, we think it's an act of faith, and that all of this is very biblical, but part of what is not explained in detail in that part of the Bible is that all of these microorganisms that are also part of creation really work for us and on our behalf. Um, this is what I believe is what it means to when it says that it will be done in earth as it is in heaven. To me, and I'd like to invite you today to just imagine if we get Krista Tippett to invite one time Elaine Ingram, which is like the Yoda for this kind of topics. And then what is the conversation that they will have? And what a treat that will be. Imagine for a second that all these microorganisms will be elevated to the rank of angels. But instead of angels in heaven, they're like angels in the soil. What do you think about bacteria that is beneficial, fungi, or red worms? For me, they are really important for our life. So that's why I wanted to mention that. So whether you look at perennials, gardens that are the gardens of either that permaculturists are trying to recreate, or whether you look at massive productions of corporations that do GM on with vegetables that are only grown once in the season, um, whether you only eat protein, you need to know that none of that will be possible without healthy soil. That means the microorganisms and the macroorganisms that transform the nitrogen into things that the plants can transform into, what we can process. There is no other way we as humans can process nitrogen. And so the only reason why we as humans were able to proliferate and multiply is for grace of God, but also because he created this system. And what did we do with it? We have become very greedy, right? Here comes the sun, is nourishing all these plants, but then we oppress and abuse the system. And there was even a king that, the Louis King, part of the, I'm not sure who's mine.
Let me leave. I'll leave.
Thank you. But you can come back without music. Okay. So the Louis Quince and the world corporations really abuse this food system. And the reason that I'm mentioning this is that we went from gatherers to farmers, and then in these monarchical systems, we kind of detour, and especially in America, with the Doctrine Monroe, we started to relate yield and profit with grace. So we really try to push this the farthest possible with all of those agrochemical companies that are huge now, bigger than countries in terms of power. But initially, the founding fathers had some more connection with the land. And I think that's why they call it Virginia around the area where I live, and Maryland, and a lot of them in their, in Monticello and all those documents from Thomas Jefferson. So they talk about manure as something that will recover the virginity of the land. So they had their own preconceptions and their own limitations. But what I'm trying to get at this is that everything happened really fast in terms of nature eras. And then suddenly, after having a culture of monarchy and so forth, we became industrialized, and then we have excess, right? And in this country, there is more excess than in any other country in terms of food waste. We have 40% of the household waste that is food waste in America, and this is at least $2,000 equivalent a year in a family of four. You can get more information about this in our website. I'll mention in a minute, but basically this means that half of the household's organic waste is not really going back to the soil. And I feel like this is the biggest injustice, that it's socially and economically an injustice for those countries. And we are not talking about that as Christians. These waste emits methane that is 25 more toxic, and it pollutes. So let me just keep going here. This is the website I was talking about, savethefood.com. You can go there and learn a lot of recipes and ways to reduce your food waste so that the problem is smaller to begin with. And so this is something that governments are trying to fix, but really the problem is much more bigger than what a government can respond to. And one of the organizations that I really want to point your way is the Institute for Local and Self-Reliance. They have a pyramid that is even better than the EPA one, because it really involves how we integrate local groups like our communities of faith in the solutions for this. So in addition of really planning your meals and knowing what you're gonna buy and buy mindfully and buy locally, we can also rescue food like a lot of the pantries in our churches, but we also can help our fellows to do compost at home. And honestly, if we want to bring more millennial people and we want to grow as church instead of decline, we should be doing much more small scale decentralized composting in our churches. And if that doesn't mean that next month you're going to start receiving all the food scraps from all the people that come to your church. It's not like that. What I'm suggesting here is that you start with a tripping system where you can very well allow the leaves from those trees that are in the premises of your church to remain on your church. And even if you decide to only compost coffee grains and leaves, that's already a wonderful start that helps build community and that will not compromise any like health standards. So from the Garden of Eden, no, the Eden Garden, we came to be one of the countries with the biggest obesity. And Mexico is right there. They fight for the first and second place, which is so sad because being overweight doesn't necessarily mean that we are well nourished. We went from this to this, and where are we going to end? I wanna believe that it's a positive result, that we're not gonna end up like those fatalistic views of the future that they have. Like, have you watched that movie called Wally from Disney? If not, I recommend you watch it. And then there are other visions like the ones that Leonardo DiCaprio with like the inconvenient truth. They try to kind of mobilize us to do good out of fear. But the story that I want to tell you today is that it is proven, and by the PEC conference I was a couple years ago, that if we get too paralyzed by fear, we do nothing. So I like to call to the attention of everyone that is watching us today that there are organizations that are really focusing on the positive side, like Kiss the Ground, that focus on tangible solutions that we can replicate in our home, in our communities of faith, to fix this. And it's not just about reducing the food waste, it's about increasing the nutrition. The FAO, what is it in English? The Organization of Food, and Agriculture, had published right before the pandemic about the food security around the world. And I really recommend you to look at this study and their website. They say that now it's not 1 billion, but 2 billion people that are gonna be undernourished, in up to 3 billion people that don't receive, even if they're not hungry, that doesn't mean that they're receiving all the nutrients that they need. And I need you to look at food nutrition density more closely. This is one of the reasons why I believe we need compost desperately, because let's take a closer look. Oh, by the way, these are tortillas from Mexico, and that's my daughter. But let's take a closer look and go faster. Are you with me? Are you listening me?
Yes.
Okay, porque I feel like I'm going so fast and I'm trying to speak in my best English. You have to tell it's my third language, but here we go. So when you have a baby, it takes 9 months on average. For an elephant, it takes 18 to 22 months. And look at this cutie here. It's like part of nature, part of motherhood. It's natural to all of us. But listen, to grow a pineapple, it takes 24 months, more than an elephant, more than several babies. And most of the pineapples that come to the United States come from Costa Rica. That means that they travel 2,000 or more miles. And that means that, they make almost $1 billion in Costa Rica just so that we can have pineapples. Pineapples used to be a luxury. Now we have them year round. This person here, do you guys recognize it? Can you tell me who that is?
Calvin.
Yes, that's John Calvin. And you know what? When he was born, and in his era, only like the top 1% of Europe will have a pineapple. And you can research about this. It's such a funny element. When I moved to Old Town, where we used to live in Alexandria, where is our church, started seeing these pineapples on the doors and like a token for Christmas. And I started researching about this. It's supposed to be, such a big symbol of status. It became so fashionable lately for millennials, but it really makes me pull my hair, because in these United States, when I help a lot with compost causes, I see in a lot of the compost stands where a little bit of stuff is at least being composted. So the good guys, right, the ones that bring me their compost material at the farmers market, they bring things like these because they got the perfect pineapple. And I'm like, what are you doing? Don't you know that you can make tepache with that part of the pineapple? You can make this delicious tea. There are all these benefits. They just don't know. They don't know any better. They're well intentioned. They don't know that all these farmers that are frontline communities that are risking their lives so that they can have this 2-year-old pineapple that will never grow again from that plant. We are just not aware of how much privilege we have. And for example, I come from the land of aguacates, of avocados, and all the growers of avocados are like killing the space of the monarchs. There are more kids dying from cancer from all these avocados just to keep with the demand in the US, because then again, we're profiting. And it's not all bad, the diversity of our food, the people that now are using this superfood to stay healthier are doing much better than those that are just eating fast food, correct? But it's this happy balance that it's a struggle because we are all still children of free will, right? And so in this nation where the diversity of food makes us stronger of who we are, we have to kind of really watch out for the traditional connections that our cultures had with earth that are not permeating back the USA. That's what I like to say here today. So in the Costa Rica, Mexico, other countries, we have adapted and surrendered to these fake fertilizers and soils worldwide, but you are not bringing us back our food scraps. And that's why I really wanted to make this point here, because our soils are suffering from not having those nutrients back and for not having back that biology, and also from all these fake fertilizers. So you see, it's a bit complicated. We have changed our diets. Even like the immigrants here tend to eat more their fast food because they work so many jobs, etc. It's like a privilege to cook a nice meal from scratch. And then all these Americans have also become addicted to painkillers and to opioids. And so you see, it's a circle of addiction, but we are trying to fix it a little bit, and we are gonna think positively today. So let me just say that our guts get affected by this fake food and by these fake fertilizers too, because then the good bacteria that is in our gut is also mutilated. And I want you to watch this documentary about this, Our Second Brain. It's in Amazon. You need to watch it. And basically, it tells you more information about our gut. And what I'm telling you this today is because there is just so much that we didn't know that we were doing wrong. And one of them is the composting. So to conclude on my introduction, The compost tends, it's an arch that tends to composting bends the arch of the moral universe toward justice 1 meal at a time. Okay, so if you don't remember nothing from today, please remember that every time you eat, there is power in the things you buy and how you dispose your food scraps. And if you dispose them in a good way, then you are helping the arc of moral universe bend toward justice. Amen. Okay, now this is what I mean about how they tell us that things were wrong. They never tell us about the diversity on our gut until a couple years ago. Every time I wake up, oh, buenos dias, mundo. I also think about all of that diverse biome that lives inside my gut that helps us think. It's the same with the plants. They have told us that they only need NPK. Can anybody here tell me what NPK stands for? Those fertilizers, those master gardeners?
Sued the city of Chicago for failing to adequately plan
Nitrogen,
the impact of
potassium.
changing climate, leaving insurance companies to pick up the tab.
And phosphorus?
Phosphorus.
Muy bien, thank you. Thank you so much. I heard some background, but thank you so much. So let's move on because I see that we don't have that much time. There is people like Jeff Bezos going out of space, and I hope that they feel humble and realize that the piece of land that the United States have is quite small in the bigger scheme of things. And you and me, we're as small as this dung beetle, okay? But when we're composting in our home, we're doing our part, the same as this dung beetle, because we're part of that circle of life, and we are creating less problems for the world, not having to put all this infrastructure. If you want to learn more about how composting makes regeneration and it makes carbon sequestration, I really recommend that you watch this Institute for Local Self-Reliance series, because there is no way I can cover all of this today. But I love to dig into it with you, or if you can follow my development in this topic. So here is the one last thing I will say. If we could add this 1/2 inch of compost per year to all of those acres that are getting replenished of biology in this country, we wouldn't have enough compost. You know, the only way we're gonna be able to regenerate those soils to avoid that there is another dust ball is applying the level of compost that this country requires. And the only way to do that is to create a big tipping point. And that's why I am so filled with hope with you still listening today, with those that are watching the recording, because I feel as a Christian and a believer of nature science that it is our responsibility to push the envelope so that this can happen. And the way this can happen is by absorbing the carbon in the soil, we could really dramatically reduce climate change. I won't get more into this, but I really recommend you watch the Carbon Cowboys, or you check the Cornell Institute of Waste Management. There is a lot of information about that. So now we go to what you want to hear the most, which is the recipe. The recipe is going to be also the main topic for the International Compost Awareness Week next year. And I can tell you that the cooking time for this recipe is as short as 21 days and as long as 21 years. It is like the song in Spanish that says, depende, de qué depende. It really depends on how much you put into it. It's like relationships. Some people have like one night stands, and some people have life journeys with their husbands, and make a foundation of a family and a legacy. But if you do this right, you can do compost in 21 days and you can do it successfully. Pardon me the example, but it's a lot like that. People that just eat their food and are done with their food scraps, I think they're that kind of person that just don't want to deal with the rest, and that's really not good. Okay, so what cooking gear are you going to need? A pail for your kitchen, a space outside. We'll talk about that, air, water, love, and this trillion of microorganisms that without them is not happening. So please be humble with me about you are not the one making the compost, it's the microorganisms. I really recommend this one on the left. It's a true investment. I had mine for more than 10 years. I also have a little container as the ice cream one in my house. We don't have this fancy one to put the banana peels, which is one of the biggest hacks. That way I don't have any mosquito flies in my compost bin. And my mother-in-law has this folder can, and it works for her. It has for like her lifetime. Now this is the mix: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and water. So let's dig in. The compost systems depend on where you're gonna put it and which one you want. So you can have open systems, hybrid systems, or closed systems. And I have a full guide that I'm gonna share with you and all the resources where you can look into this. So let's skim through some of them quickly. The previous conference was talking about design, dependence, and decision. And that's exactly the same what you have to have in mind as earth steward of which system you're gonna decide. If you have a lot of space, you can do a trench, you can plant the different years where you're not using the space, where you're adding your greens and your browns, and we're gonna talk about those in a minute. But you would need the space. Am I going too fast? Do you wanna stop here? How much more time do we have?
Stop there for a second,
Okay,
please.
thank you. Any questions so far?
Daniela, this is wonderful. So will we be able to get your slides later?
Yes, you'll get all my slides, and you'll also get this other very thorough explanation of what goes in. So this is I prepare for you, and it has like the summary of all of these, okay?
Thank
And
you.
so now, of course, and now we'll get into this list of greens and browns in a minute, but first we need to see these beans really quickly. All of these beans we're gonna go through, okay?
Great.
Muy bien. So let's go into the beans. The open systems that I'm mentioning here are the ones that you can use if you have a lot of space, if you are not in a rush, if you don't have vermin, like if you're in a more like rural area, I will say. If you're like in a suburban area, you might want to consider one of these hybrid systems. And if you're in an apartment or you have a HOA or you just are not very comfortable with critters, I will recommend one of the closed systems. So let's just go into it. These open systems are as simple as nature happens, you know, it just happens. You put the greens and the browns in the right amount and make sure you just let it there, but you probably live in a ranch if that's the case. Some kids do experiments in schools, middle schools and high schools. They have open piles as they completely cover them with browns on top. They have no problems as long as there is no, you know, it's all vegetables. It's like a vegan compost. What I like a lot of my friends do in Austin is this trench compost system where they put red worms in here and then they cover it. So it's like a burial type of compost. They completely cover it with soil. And it's really good for those who have the time and the patience to do this, and that can invest a little bit on the worms. These compost sacks are really great to collect your browns, and in general for people with limited space that like to try them. They're basically just a huge bag that holds 100 gallons of compost. My preferred methods, if you do have the space, are these coated wire systems because they're really easy to open and close and to collect. And they allow all the air and water to go into your pile. But if you live in a place like Seattle that rains a lot, you might not want one of those systems. These systems, I haven't been able to get my hands on one of these, but they're the most popular system in India. They're so great. They're made of terracotta, like your pots, and they just look wonderful. They're enclosed, so they're really good for you know, limited spaces too. This GeoBean, it's really good as well because of the price, and you can basically just set it up anywhere. If you live in an area like Montana, which unfortunately is having all those fires, or a place with bears, you might want an enclosed one like this one. This one's from Canada, and it works really well to really avoid any critters going in. However, as you can imagine, it doesn't have as much access for water and air. So you have to really be careful for these to not go anaerobic. You know, compost bin can be as imaginative as humans are. So these are some from the Victorian era that some people do in UK. And these are the tumblers that I was talking to you about. Actually, one of these tumblers, like the one on the left, is called Genesis, which I thought it was kind of funny. These tumblers, if you're in a place where it's a limited sunlight, are really good to absorb sunlight, and they're really completely like out of critters. So they will be an easy way to make sure that you don't have rats, you don't have raccoons. Some people really like them because it's also easier to turn your compost. There's some of them made of metal. They're way more expensive, but it's a matter of preference. There are also these ones that are called Earth Machine. People, some cities have rebates for those. And then there is also these ones that are not composters, they're biodigesters. So these type of compost systems are for no yard waste. They only need your food waste, and the bokashi system can even process bones or pet waste, like from your cat or your dog. But I will say these are not for beginners. And this is my absolutely favorite one that I would like to recommend to you. Building it from scratch is something between $100 and $500, depending the quality of the materials that you put in the type of wood you use. And this specific system that you see here is quite special because it has a space in the bottom part, which avoids the rats to live underneath, especially in places where it's cold in the winter. If your compost system is sitting on the floor, the rats will find a way to dig underneath that floor to stay warm in the winter. So having that space in between is really important for air to flow and not make it a nest for rats. Do we have any questions on compost systems? Okay.
Daniela, I have one question,
Yes.
and you might get into this later, but with food scraps, will you be talking about the composition of the food scraps?
Yes, that's next.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so feeding your microorganisms, the feast or the buffet we're preparing for them, has for me two very simple rules. You add the greens and the browns, and in my universe, they need to be at least in 50-50 amounts, but that's by no means what is recommended by professionals and municipalities. They would like you to have as much as 25% of greens and 75% of browns. So my rule of thumb is that if it grows, it goes. That means that it never had a mouth. If it had a mouth, that means that you cannot put it in your compost bin. Because if you are a beginner, I will really not recommend it. It's not because it won't decompose, because if you really become a professional of this, you will know that even in the Cornell Institute for Waste Management, they tell you that even cows can decompose carcasses. There are horrible novels and stories of mafia in New Jersey composting more than that. But I will really recommend you stay with the greens that only grow. So if it comes from a plant, it's all right. And then for browns, what I say when I'm trying to get my kids educated about this is no fakes and keep it real. And I'll show you what I mean by that because I already had my list here. So for the greens, all the vegetables, peels, carrots. If somebody wants to read, the person that was asking the question, can you want to go through this list very quickly and see if you have any questions?
Sure. All I'm seeing right now is the greens and the browns.
Yes, so just go for the greens.
Okay, I just see if it grows, it goes. I don't see the list yet.
Oh, you don't see the other?
Mm.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a very nice list. Let's do it. Can you see it now?
Yeah, you want me to read it?
Yeah, if you think we have the time, I honestly think it's not needed because it's a lot of detail. You can go through this anytime. I love to crush the eggshells, like you wash them and you squeeze them. But basically, all of these food scraps go and they're good to go. It basically means that the forbidden items are meat, bones, beef, poultry, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And if something is too fatty or too greasy. So if you make a pasta salad with olive oil and it has a little bit of Parmesan cheese, I will totally dump that in my compost bin with no problem. If I had leftovers or they went bad, first of all, that doesn't go bad in my house because we are like very strict about this and we eat everything. But if you had that, I wouldn't worry, because if there is less than 1% of those forbidden things in your compost bin, you're gonna be okay. But it really depends if you have rats in the area or not, and how much of this you can really handle. What I will really definitely stay away from is glossy magazines, pamphlets. That stuff has some sort of chemicals that I just don't like in your compost. And then treated wood, and then droppings from dogs or cats. But do you have any questions about the greens?
I've just heard some people suggest no cooked food, but that's a little stricter than what you're suggesting.
Yes, so for example, if you go to the municipal recommendations from Austin, they will tell you also no cooked food. But I used to run the trainings for the rebate, and they were okay with me saying this. If you go to the Rodale Institute, which is like the maximum authority for soil preparation, they will tell you that everything goes. It's real an ability of what you feel comfortable with. So I will recommend, if it's the first year you're composting, you should stay away from those, because you don't want to push yourself too far that you feel like you fail or you feel discouraged. But as you gain confidence with your compost bin and you have finished material, then you can add a little bit of this stuff. So
Okay,
the
thank you.
easiest thing to start with is, I think, the all pizza boxes. But really, compost food that has, I mean, cooked food that has no meat in it, I put in. And if I have even a dish that had meat in and I need to put in, I will remove the meat and let the other part go, whether it's couscous or quinoa or the other stuff, because that part is not harmful for my compost. Is that enough of a response?
Yeah, thank you.
It's kind of like your own criteria with these. And so let's talk about the browns. It's the same thing. If the leaves of your neighbor look super perfect for your compost, but you know he sprays a lot of stuff and you want to use your compost for your growing your tomatoes, then please leave them out. But if you are going to do your compost just to reduce your food waste and you're going to put it back into your lawn, like you're gonna sprinkle it around your cesspit, your green lawn, or around your trees, I will not necessarily think this will hurt. So if you have most stuff, even the pathogens of most of these things, if your compost gets hot enough, they will decompose. So one of the reasons why cities tell you not to put dairy and meat is to keep, because they cannot account for your capacity to get your compost bin to a thermophilic stage where it's hot enough, the enough number of days, so that E. coli, salmonella, and other type of harmful fungi and bacteria will die. So it's just to keep it on the safe side. So maybe we should go back to the presentation so I can talk a little bit about that. See? And thank you for your patience, because I'm just trying to give you all the love I can in a very short time. So are we doing okay? How much more time we have?
It says that the workshop goes till 8:30.
Okay, so I'll try to finish in like 10 more minutes, and so that you have more chance for questions, but we'll see how we go. And then if we have more time, we can go through this list. How about that?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So my presentation is, where is it? Here. Okay, compartir. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is what I was talking about, the browns. If you have cardboard that does not have gloss on it, whether it's from a package that you receive from the shipments of, something that got to your house, or whether it's a cardboard box that has been sitting in your house for a decade, you can put it in. I love to make them use the water of my kids when they take a bath, and I have a lot of cardboard. I just put it in there and then just collect it in a 5-gallon bucket, because that way it's so much easier that I don't have to tear it apart. Otherwise, I do have to tear it apart. And all those other materials that are glossy, like this cream cheese, I will just keep out. I will not even try to do those. So what's actually happening in your compost is that it's like a big party, and people are different, are invited. I mean, these microorganisms are invited in different courses. That's kind of what I think about it. So first, the bacteria comes in because they're like the ones that are going to make things easier for the next layer. And then, you know, the mesophilic and then the thermophilic, and then it goes down again. So here is an example of how hot it needs to get so that we really kill these pathogens. That's what I was trying to talk about in a minute ago. So if we don't let the compost, if the compost is not 3 feet by 3 feet, for example, or if we don't let it at least for 14 days, then it will not reach the necessary heat to decompose these pathogens, and it will not really break down. So let me just see if I can show you when it's ready to use your compost. And I think I missed to tell you about how to add them. So let me just go back there. I'm gonna use this image of the trench, or maybe I'm gonna stop sharing. Can you see me? Okay, so I have this bucket that I just got from my family here in Minneapolis. It's like the one I bought. And when it's filled with the food scraps from my kitchen, I hope you can see me better. Is that any better? When I fill it with the food scraps from my kitchen, by the way, when the filter is gone, I just like use it without the filter. I take this whole thing and I put it in the bin system that I have chosen. So let's imagine that I just have a pile in the floor because I have a lot of space in the forest. I will just literally dump this whole thing of food scraps. First, I'll make like a little hole in the pile, and I will go and I'll dump it. And so I will consider this maybe 25% to keep it on the safe part. So this is like a 1/4, right? So this is one share. So I fill it, and that's one, and that's one of greens. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the other part of my land where I have all those leaves from the fall already sitting in a corner, and I'm gonna scoop them over with this, and I'm gonna fill it up to here of leaves, whether they're oak or even if they're pine needles, whatever it is that you have for browns, okay? Then I'm gonna fill it right on top of that green. And so I will consider that another 25%. And here is the thing, my bucket is gonna be all filthy on the inside from the coffee grounds and all that stuff if I didn't layer it with a newspaper, which is also great because in the United States, there are some regulations that the ink on the newspaper is safe for you. So if you have a newspaper or even that non-wanted mail, as long as it's not glossy, you know, if it's glossy, you cannot use it. But if you have some of that paper from marketing that it's just like newspaper, you can just layer it here, and then you put your food scraps here, and then you dump it there. And so now I had one of greens and one of leaves. I have more leaves, so I'm gonna scoop those again, and I'm gonna put them over. So I had one of food scraps and two of leaves, but I want to have 3 just to keep it on the safe side. So I'm gonna go to my shredder, and I have paper from my office that I shredder, and I'm gonna use that. Or, you know, the napkins of my kitchen, any of the stuff that I consider browns. And I'm gonna put 3 of those, okay? So at the end, my pile is gonna look completely covered by browns. My food is not visible. I'm gonna send you a video from the Cornell Institute for Waste Management. They have this very technically, they call it, you want it a ball, not a bump. Because when it looks like a ball with your greens and you cover it with the browns, you never want it to look like a heap, because then it's like, you know, it's not easy for that material to decompose. But this is your biggest friend. If you have one of these, you have no others, no problems in your kitchen. I really recommend investing on one of these. And I will never put here my banana peels because it's gonna get all those mosquito flies. In every banana group, there is like hundreds of mosquito flies, and that's what gives most people the problem. But most of the apples, most of the other food will not have that situation. And if you buy good produce, they will not have as much problems at all. Any questions? Can we go back to the presentation?
Yep.
Okay. Let me go here. Compartir. How are you feeling? Are we doing okay?
Yeah.
Very helpful,
Yes.
thank you.
My presentations are more fun in person, but let me just try my best here. For the cooking of this recipe, you need to trust your senses, trust your gut. If it smells like earth, Guadalajara, do you know this song? It says you smell like wet dirt, like when a day of rain smells, the healthy earth. That's how your compost should smell. If your compost smells stinky, that means that it went anaerobic. You have a problem. You have to fix it. It's not ready. But when it's ready, it smells just so good, and you cannot see any pieces of food. If it's more like 80-20, then you use a sifter to separate it. And there's some really cool sifters out there. I'm gonna add some of those pictures to this presentation. I from scratch because my other one went kaput. But the most important thing I need to tell you about when it's ready is that you could invest in filters that look for your compost bin, that look like the ones you use for the turkey. Your compost, this is if you are kind of in the scientific, you're not gonna need this thermometer. You're just gonna know it's ready. But if you wanna be 100% sure, you stick one of those in there. You need to know that your compost is been at least 14 days. Let me just check my notes here. At least 14 days. And so for the cookies, the fastest recipe, the one that goes as soon as 21 days. Okay, let me just stop. Can you see me? Okay. So when I was talking about 21 days or 21 years is because it all depends what kind of bin system you have. So now I'm training with the Yoda of compost in the DMV area, and his name is Benny. He has a farm called Eco City Farms, and he trained with the Austrians and all of these, like top of the top. Here is what I'm gonna tell you. Benny is able to make finished compost for his worms in 21 days. Why? Because he has a barrel with all the food scraps from the restaurant separated from the brown. So what I'm gonna tell you is he makes a humongous salad. He has like a kid's pool where when he's ready to get his compost mix, he makes like a humongous salad. He puts, let's say, 25 gallons of greens, of food scraps, and then he puts 75 gallons of the browns, the mulch, the leaves, so that the mix is the same that I did with this, but all at the same time decomposing. So when you mix all of those ingredients, the greens, the browns, the water, the air, a lot of water he adds, and then you put them together in a pile that is 3 by 3 by 3, all of them at once is like you are cooking the stew all at once, right? At full fire. And then all of those microorganisms got like, they start like having a party there, and it's going on fire, and all the thermophilic things are like munching and decomposing, and it's party. But if you're having a lasagna compost, then it's all going little by little. And if it's winter, even more, So are you in a hurry? I hope not, because Presbyterians are about method. And what I'm saying is, if you're a farmer and you need that finished product like he is as fast as possible, then yeah, you want to maximize it, right? But if what you want to do is avoid your food scraps to go to the landfill or to go to the incinerator, which is even worse. And that's what I was calling this conference Compost Matters, because all of those food scraps that you are sending to the incinerator, they're the fumes that are making the kids from the minority groups, the Latinos, the African Americans, they're getting them sick. So that's why I like people to compost. And that's why I think so important that churches compost, because it's a matter of social justice. We can pray a lot, but if we have coffee time and then all of those food scraps are going to the incinerator, we're being part of what is getting those people sick. Okay, but going back to the compost bins and the mix. Your compost piles, there are people in Ithaca where I went to Cornell, that have them for 10 years and they don't bother them. They don't mix them, they don't turn them, they just let it be, let it be, let it be. and they're happy piles. When you go and you touch that matter, it's just perfect nutritious material that is there just as the forest, you know. The forest doesn't say, oh, I'm gonna move this tree. It just slowly through decades and decades decomposes and nourishes everything that it needs to nourish. Now, normally, even if you don't turn your pile, if you cut everything really small and you put it in that lasagna layer, it should take anything between it, whether you live in Austin or in Canada, it will take anything from 6 months to 2 years in the right conditions in your compost bin. And I do recommend that if you're planning not to turn it, you get a hack to make sure that it's aerated, right? So depending of the compost bin you have. But you don't need to disturb that compost bin if it's not necessary, unless you're in a rush. So I'll go back to the pantalla to try to share some more. Compartir. Okay. So I had already spoken about the trenches that are here. And this is the stages. And then when your compost, it is ready, when I mentioned that it smells like compost and you cannot see any longer the food, then you're gonna know that it's ready. So hopefully, if you have a system like this, let me show you the earth one. You see, if you have one of these, even if you don't turn it, you're gonna see that at the end, you can scrap that stuff on the bottom, and that's what you put on your plants. And then on the top, you're gonna have all of that compost that is still happening. Now, for these systems, can you see the tumblers? Okay, I'm gonna share something about the tumblers that is important, because tumblers can be, no salir de la reunión, no, dejar de compartir. Can you see me? Okay. So the tumbler is really tricky because you have a tumbler. You bought your tumbler. It's like $200 or $100. You bought it. And then you put your food scraps. And then if you just put this stuff in the tumbler and you are like, oh, good luck. Or you put one of these of soil, it's not going to happen automatically. Like you can get that thing to be really stinky and putrefact and be disgusting and aerobic if you don't add enough amount of browns. Now, when do you know it's ready in that compost, in that tumbler? If it's always tumbling and tumbling and tumbling, you are going to wait until it doesn't fit anymore. And that's gonna take so many months, because even if you live alone, woo, it can be like more than a year. But if you have a big family and it has a lot of food scraps and you cut them really, really, really small, okay? And you add enough water, but not too much water, then it goes down to 20% of its size and 20% of its size. So it's going to take about 2 to 6 months for that to really fill until there is no more. So you decide that you want that compost to be finished for, let's say, a couple months from now, you stop adding to the mix. So that's why some of them have 2 compartments. Let me go again to it. That's why some of them have 2 compartments. See, like this one, he has the right and the left, so that you have one side where you decided you're finishing adding materials and it's just really starting to cook. And then on the left side, you can have one side cooking and the other one where you are adding stuff. Because if you only have one space to put things in, then you have to stop adding so that it all equally can decompose together. Does that make sense? See, maybe a little bit. Muy bien. So I am almost done. Let me tell you here. There is this beautiful image that I have. With your finished compost, you have these billions of microorganisms, okay? These gazillions of microorganisms, because I cannot even start explaining right now the little bit I know about the microbiology, but in a healthy gram of soil, like in a handful of good finished compost, there is more beneficial microorganisms that there are humans on the earth. Obviously, the size is because of the scale of the size. But these are the folks that we really thrive on. It's really the bacteria that are making things happen in the soil and also in our bodies. And so it's a dance, you know, like if you ever read Daniela Meadows, she has a beautiful poem about dancing with the systems and dancing with the stars. Daniela Meadows, I really recommend her. So if you like that type of way to think about this, the finished compost you have enriches the soil, replenishes the roots, and provides the right kind of biology to your skin of the soil you have in your floor. So let me try to organize my thoughts and not look at the screen. What I'm trying to tell you with this, look, I'm sorry, it's just I don't think in English. Listen, my face, see, is getting wrinkled because I'm 40 already, and my mom kept telling me since half a life, oh, you have to use moisturizer in your skin. You have to use moisturizer because that's just how you take care of your skin. I want you to think, now I regret that I didn't use it earlier, right? Around my eyes and all that. Well, the part of the background in your backyard is that part of the skin of the earth that it's in your trust. So if you put fertilizers or if you put anything that will leach into the aquifer, that is also something that you could be doing differently to be a better steward. And this is the way that you can preach compost to your friends, whether they're Presbyterians, whether they're agnostics. Everybody can relate and feel empathy that that piece of land that belongs to them and the way they treat it is the same than when they feed their kids organic or they feed them GMO, right? It's what we can do. There's so many decisions in the world where we have no part of it, right? But this we do. So the type of amendments that you put in the floor could be healing a lot. And so I think somebody has told me that I need to finish. No? I'll try to wrap up. I'll try to wrap up really quickly. This is what I was trying to say with the skin. I invite you to think about this more holistic way to look at compost. If you have any questions, please let me know. With the finished compost, what I recommend you do is that you grow some perennials. That way you can start building your own food forest, or you can sprinkle it anywhere. If you're not willing to compost yourself, but you believe in compost, you could support some of the local businesses in your city that pick up the compost for you, because those are also ways to create jobs in the region. And it's a really nice way to just pay a little bit, the same that you pay for your, some of those subscriptions you may have to a service or entertainment for yourself. You can pay for the compost and you can really feel good about all the jobs you are creating that way. If you want to go a step further, you could be part of those collective efforts that other nonprofits like Sierra Club, I'm part of their board, but also the Zero Waste Committee. And that way we try to push policy so that there is collection of food scraps and that the cities have a master plan, because really not just about the compost, it's about the holistic view of reducing our waste. It's just compost is really important because of the soil. Now, let me tell you, during the pandemic, a lot of people stopped composting, and there was a lot of recall in a lot of environmental stuff. But I feel like this lady, Hiroko Tabuchi, she published something in the New York Times that when compost collection stopped in New York City, she started composting in these little box in that Japanese style. You can read her article in the New York Times. That really gave me so much hope. It's the same than this guy, Jeff Chu, because he has a sermon called The Theology of Compost. He's making analogies that might not be related specifically to compost, but I think that he totally nailed it when he said that composting is a way that we can give testimony as Christians. Well, that I'm telling you, but what he said is that we need to write a narrative of hope in the midst of, all the narratives of despair. This is my favorite hack, everyone. This is a plant. This is something that you use to plant trees, and I use it in my compost. I go in the retrieving systems that I cannot move because I'm not that strong. I had 2 C-sections, and I just go with this and I dig in, and that really helps move a little bit of the compost without doing too much disturbance. It gets all of those macro critters that, by the way, you need to love and embrace because they're also part of God's creation. The roly-polies and the cockroaches and all of that stuff, even the maggots, they just get like, woo, what happened? What happened? And that really accelerates the compost. Then also the chop, chop, chop. Imagine you have a full watermelon in your compost bin. It's going to decompose eventually. But all those microorganisms cannot really help you if they don't have edges. The more surface you give them to work with, the best they can be of your service. These millions of microorganisms, billions, trillions, that work 24/7, they don't have a salary, they're working for you, they're helping you grow those fruits and vegetables that you want in your garden. So all you need to do is be nice to them and chop them really small and enjoy this process. Because what it is of compost, if it's not a relationship, it's the same as when you go to church. It's a matter of faith. It's like when you're dating someone. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you feel like composting, sometimes you just don't want to compost, so you just put it in your freezer and then you'll chop it later. Sometimes you're very motivated and you want to use your food processor because you want to be meticulous about this. And sometimes you're just going to toss a big thing there because it's like an experiment to you. It works. Just do not persist on this. It's like faith. It's a journey, not a destination. Okay, thank you for your time. This is the last things I'm gonna say. There are resources that I can show you in this presentation that I really use. That book of Rodell I really love to have. Here is my book. And I really would like you to think on the bigger scale of things about what you eat, because also what you put in your compost, a lot of those chemicals in your food that is not organic will decompose. It will be clean up of that. Composting works in that way. But if you keep those dirty dozen out of your gut, then you're gonna be smarter, happier, and more pacific. Then please make sure you check the hack on the pineapple because you will be amazed. And every time you eat a pineapple now, please think about the new narrative that you could be sharing with the world. If you want more information about how to prevent food, please follow me. Every spring we do the food waste challenge with kids in schools. We really measure their food waste at home, and everybody's welcome to do that. And make sure you watch a few documentaries that relate to this so that you feel stronger about how to preach compost to your friends and family. Check out these resources. If you really feel so motivated that you want to make it happen for your community, for your church, you can look at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. They have more information about those communities around you that are doing this. And remember to buy local, because your consumption is your power. You can vote with the power of your plate. And that is all that I have for you. I hope you have questions. If you have questions, please let me know. And if not, I'm just gonna wait. Gracias.
Thank you.
No questions? Anybody? Don't be shy.
Did you say there's not a problem? You know, you were talking about putting paper and things, you know, that the inks are okay. I mean, even if you're going to put it on a vegetable garden, like.
No. I was saying anything that has, okay,
Yeah.
let's just try to explain. Any paper like this that has ink, like this book, if I had to compost this book, this I will compost without a problem because I'm not concerned about this ink.
Okay.
But anything that is glossy like this, like a magazine, like a pamphlet of a pharmacy, I will not put, because the glossiness is made out of fossil fuels, is oleum like this. So that I will not put, just this kind of material. I will shred it and put it on my compost, like newspaper. But like if you live in Central America and you're watching this, please not put your newspaper because the inks are different.
Thank you.
I love questions. Any more questions?
I already have fruit flies in my compost. I think I am not adding enough brown, but if I add that, will they go away?
Yes. Fruit flies are different than dragonflies, black soldier flies. And I have to tell you, I think they're all beneficial to your compost. It's just when you have too much dragonflies, black soldier flies, I think that means something is going wrong because it's a sign of. But fruit flies in itself, do you have them in the small bin like this or in the big one?
No, and the big outside one when I open it.
You don't like them?
I think it's okay. I just wondered if it means I need to add more brown.
Definitely, I will add more browns. I will go to my nearest coffee place and ask them if they have like a big gallon bucket of coffee grains.
Okay.
And that will solve it. But in the future, you'll understand that they are not there. You're like the fruit fly started in the eggs that come from your fruits. Like your apples have some eggs in that little place where the core is. And then they go there and they're in a very prolific environment and they reproduce and they grow. Like, woo, we're part of this. So
Yeah.
that's especially the bananas, why they have so much right there. I don't mind with the fruit flies, but I understand what you mean. Sometimes turning the whole compost bin will just eliminate them because they're mostly just in the surface.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
On your green list, I saw avocado pit. How
Yes.
about avocado skin?
Yes.
It's okay?
Avocado, everything. If your avocado went completely dark, you can put it in. Now, if you cut your avocado and you want to keep it green, just keep the pit on the avocado when you haven't finished eating it. That's just what we do in Mexico. But yes, the pit can go. Obviously, the pit is going to take way longer to decompose. So it's about a matter of how much patience you have. It might take more than 2 years, but it will. If you leave it there, it will. So both, the skin of anything goes. You want to go back to the list?
No,
Okay.
my neighbor has black walnut trees and I try to keep the leaves out of my compost because they have a poison called jugalone in it. Do you know about that?
Yeah, very little. So your finished compost you're using for vegetables, probably.
Right, right.
I understand. So it's right underneath your compost bin. Is walnut.
It's a good distance away. I don't take the leaves to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, see, a couple leaves fall there, it won't be an issue, but you cannot absorb all of his leaves. That's a really good point for research. I wonder if you make a separate place just for those leaves to decompose in itself. You know, once they do break down, you could have just leaves and coffee grounds like I was suggesting in a different bin and just have them completely break down. And I'm not sure, but I will ask for you if you like in the master gardener, if those walnut leaves turn into compost, has all that material that is toxic for your garden have also left, you know, because a lot of it vapors out or just breaks down. And so if you separately compost it, maybe that will be helpful. Curated in a way.
So Daniela,
Yes.
I missed the part about the dirty dozen.
Oh, that was at the very end.
Yeah.
You
What's
want to
that
go
about?
back? Okay, let me go back. Yes, of course. That's just a list that was published and it is updated every year by the organization. I'll show you which is the organization that makes that list. Here. It's this one, the Center Environmental Working Group. And they're very reliable. You can look at this presentation, you have all the sources right there. And they basically look at what are the things you eat that have the most pesticides that are harmful to you. And so those 12 things here I have these pesticides. So if you buy strawberries that are organic, you're making an investment, but you're keeping all those pesticides from the strawberries away from your system as you eat them. And what I'm trying to say there is that that's kind of compost for you because you are the eater of these foods. And if you have a lot of these chemicals in your gut, they're gonna affect the bacteria in your gut. So if you use compost made with these leftovers of the strawberry, if you make compost right, chances are that those chemicals are going to be out of your compost. By the time you use that compost in growing your tomatoes, it's not like your tomatoes are gonna make you sick or anything. It's directly the strawberries you bought in the first place because they had those chemicals still in them. Even if you wash them really well, that will affect your gut. Does that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. And so at the same time, they also say, basically the rule of thumb with vegetables is if they have a thin skin that you eat into it, then there is more risk for the chemicals. If they have a thick skin, like the pineapple or the bananas, anything that you're not eating the skin out of them, then you're probably on the safe side, not buying organic in those. That's the easiest way to think about this. Muy bien, I think Jen had a question, or I want to be respectful of your time. Are we finished, or I have time for 2 more questions if you want to stay, and if not, I'm just so very grateful. No more questions? Okay, well, I'm humble too because you're all probably Presbyterians for much longer time than me. And I am just at awe of all the community that I had a chance to meet here. Oh, I see the information here. No more questions here. Being with you, everyone in this group, the PCUSA PEC, makes me hope that things can happen. And I know that with all that we have gone through the pandemic together, we all feel collectively called to action to go one step further. So thank you for your time in a Sunday night. And please share this information. And I'm happy if you contact me, please add my Instagram so that you can have more information about compost. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful for your time and all your information that you've given us. And I know it's much better to be in person, but this has been so helpful anyway. I hope it's been good for you too, but it's been very, very helpful information. So thank you.
Gracias. And please give me feedback. Anything that can help me improve is also very, I'm grateful for. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela.
Good night, everyone.
I think we're going to wait and they'll put us back in the room at some point.
So Daniela, where are you now?
In Minneapolis, in a suburb called Eden Prairie.
Okay, will you be staying there?
No, I am leaving tomorrow to be in the Crazy Horse and Rushmore Memorial for the first time ever.
Oh, okay.
We're doing a vacation kind of, with the family.
Okay. And then back to DC?
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
We're actually in a journey from here to Seattle. It's like one in a lifetime trip. And we really try hard to get an electric car for our journey to rental. We made a video about it, but it's just an opportunity to meet the national parks. I'm now part of a nonprofit called Corazon Latino, and we're trying to encourage more Latinos to appreciate the national parks and the forest in general, like part of a mental health, because a lot of them work so hard in the front lines, but they don't visit the national parks as much.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a plan like this land is your land. They work so hard, but they don't feel like they feel entitled to the parks as much. So I'm a little bit researching, and I'm also in a journey of my children meeting their family, their American family. They're meeting their relatives that we just haven't met.
Well, have a wonderful, safe journey.
Thank you.
And your message is one that is good for wherever you land or all of us that tune in. Thank you so much.
Gracias. We'll have the same presentation in Spanish next week. So if you have any friends that speak Spanish, this is a great way to loop them in, or if they want to practice the Spanish. I think I do it so much better in Spanish.
Oh, you did it great in English, so I can only imagine. Anyway,
Thank you for this opportunity, Jane. I really appreciate it. I don't know why we're still recording, but
Oh.
I hope this this doesn't take much time from other people.
Thanks.
Do we have anybody else here? Is it everyone gone?
Now we have probably like, looks like 10 people maybe.
So ask questions, please. We're here and we kind of waiting to be taken away. Have you composted? You want to share? We'd be love to hear.
Okay, I'll ask a question while we're waiting. I was looking on growing. I think I was trying to different ways to grow different tomatoes, and I noticed. I just wanted to know your opinion or your take on that. When people put, I saw somebody put. They had the dirt in a pot, and then they chapped some compost things like fresh, like whatever things they had in their kitchen, and put it inside of a plastic water bottle that had a hole. They poke holes on it and put it inside the dirt and plant the ground and plant the plant. So it has this fresh composting decomposing through the hole inside the dirt where the plant is planted. So what is your own intake on that? Is that
I saw that also on like TikTok or something. I'm not familiar with the method. I feel like agronomists and people that are more, meticulous about composting probably won't support it. I think that Carol says we're all
Well,
living.
no, I think I just got the instruction. If you go down to the right-hand corner, I don't mean to interrupt your talking there, but if you go down to the right-hand corner and you hit the button, blue button says leave room.
Okay.
Back in the big room.
Okay, great. That's great. I'll go back in a second.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. It's not my cup of tea, but I will say if it's only vegetables, it might not be as harmful, but there is a big chance that that bottle can go a little bit anaerobic, and because it doesn't have enough browns in the bottle, it probably will, yes, decompose, but my guess is that will only like leachate, like it'd be like a leachate of decomposing material, because there is not natural biology that is coming up. So if it was a worm bin, or if there were worms with some soil in it, so maybe, but I don't understand how it can be a beneficial bacteria if it doesn't have enough biology in it. Does that make sense?
okay? Yes.
It can break down, but it's not just about things breaking down. It's about making them nourishing food for the bacteria that you want in your compost pile. Because it's not so much the nutrients that get to your plants. All those nutrients already embedded in the soil. Soil has enough nutrients for like 100 years. Like if they have the right biology, you don't even need to do crop rotation. According to Elaine Ingram, you don't need to do crop rotation. You don't need to put any amendments. If you have the right kind of microorganisms, they kind of like uncrunch those minerals and those nutrients for you and bring them to the roots of the plant so that they can take it. And so in order for that to happen, you need to have those microorganisms. If you don't have beneficial bacteria, not gonna happen. It might decompose, it might make your tomatoes worse. That is my take, but you can try and see. Good luck.
Well, I was reluctant to try that. I was just curious about it. Thanks for commenting on it.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Well,
I'll
you have
go
a good one. I really learned a lot tonight. My eyes were just staring at the screen because I really wanted to take that one. Thank you.
I'll make sure you guys get the form with all the information, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.